What up, everybody? I'm back, and so this review is actually not even late. Uh, I did say I posted yesterday, but then I posted a video yesterday, and in the description I did mention how I'd be posting this today, but, everyone else in the world has already reviewed this movie at this point, so I'm just hopping on that bandwagon, I guess. But, I'll be giving this video maximum effort, so in case you've watched Deadpool, you get that reference. If you haven't, go watch Deadpool. So right now I'm going to be doing the non-spoiler section of my review, and I want to start out by saying I love it. I love this movie. It was really funny. Funnier than I thought it'd be from the commercials. I thought it'd be all humor that was just a bit crude, but, some of it was. But they were able to balance it with some really good humor. And right away, just from the opening credits, I immediately knew this movie was going to be something that I would like. And the opening credits it was the original test footage for Deadpool that was leaked a long time ago with the car, where he drops into the car and fights all those guys. But it was like mid-scene, and it was in it was in slow motion, and it was like panning around the car, and you could see all the names pop up, but instead of the names of the actors or the people who went to work on this movie or anything like that, it was like an overpaid corporate whatever. It was like starring a CG character, produced by this and this, and none of them were actual names. They were all just parody names or spoof names, and it was really funny. So, like I just said, Deadpool is a hilarious movie. Go see it for the comedy alone. Now, like I said, it is really funny, but not all jokes landed. Some of it just seemed like they were being outrageous just because they could. It was like a lot of the jokes they made just because it was an R movie, and they're like, it's an R movie, so why not make it as outrageous as possible? But a lot of it was funny. There was only like a very small minority of the jokes didn't land. So, I think it's a hilarious movie. My friends who I saw it with think it's a hilarious movie. And it was a pretty cool movie too. The action sequences were really well done, and it was exciting. Now I do want to see this movie again because there were so many jokes and so many references to other things that I 100% didn't catch them all. There's no way. So I'd be interested to go see the movie again and pick up on all the references that I didn't catch the first time viewing the movie, because that would be definitely interesting to see if I could get them all. Now, this movie is definitely not for everyone. It doesn't even pretend that it's for everyone. The trailers don't make it out to be, although they did the marketing was good in the fact that they had a green band and red band trailers released simultaneously every time, but at the same time that also got people who definitely should not be seeing this movie very hyped for the movie, such as little kids who like superheroes. Those kids definitely should not see Deadpool. If you are not over the age of, I'm going to say 13, and you don't have decent exposure to adult things, do not go see this movie. It is not for you. And also, if you're not a fan of older movies, such as, I don't know, Alien 3, they make reference to in this movie. If you don't know what any of that is, don't go see this movie either, just because you won't get a lot of the references. Rather, you could go see the movie, just know that you're going to be in the dark for a lot of the jokes. That's what my friend who went with me, he did not understand half the references in the movie, but he still loves it. He still would see it again. Now, getting into the characters, I'm going to start with Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is perfect. I don't have good exposure to Deadpool. I've only ever seen Deadpool in the movie, Lego Marvel video game, Ultimate Spider-Man, and a couple of comics. So it's not like he's one of my favorites. It's not like The Incredible Hulk, where I actually own comics of his and I read them and I'm a fan. I'm more of just a casual Deadpool fan, where if I come into contact with Deadpool, I'll read it or whatever, but that doesn't happen often. So I'm not like going out of my way to find Deadpool. So anyways, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool is, from what I know, perfect casting, and from what I've heard, perfect casting. They do it way better here than they did in whatever the other one was. It was X-Men Origins Wolverine, when they totally screwed him over. So they do it right this time, and they really let Reynolds shine as the character. Colossus in this movie. Interesting about Colossus is he's Russian, and I don't know if he's Russian in the comics, but he wasn't in X-Men 3, and that's the only other thing that I've seen Colossus in, so that kind of threw me off guard or whatever. And as Deadpool makes reference to the two different Professor X's, it also is kind of funny considering now there's two Colossus characters. One of them's Russian, the other one's not. And by Deadpool making reference to both different Professor Xaviers, it also basically said, he basically, it's a meta moment, like he's breaking the fourth wall there, but at the same time, it also is very confusing because, as he says, this whole alternate timeline thing is very confusing. It definitely is, which this lets us know that this movie takes place in the alternate timeline from Days of Future, or from X-Men 3, because we have a Russian Colossus, and the last time we saw Colossus was in the other universe when he was not Russian. Now on to Negasonic Teenage Warhead. She really was only there to provide a couple of jokes, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me saying that, but she was there to be the stereotypical teen, where even at one point they make a joke about it because Deadpool says she's going to sit there in either silence or make a rude comment, and she goes, "You really have me in a box here," which that's pretty much all her character is there to do, is make jokes about how old and lame Deadpool is and be a stereotypical teen. And then a couple of times in the movie, she does something cool. I think I counted 3 times when she uses her ability, which is to, like, power up into this fireball and explode things. And that's pretty much all that I know she does. I have no idea who she is. I haven't seen her in anything else, but from what I've seen, that's all she can do. And those are the only 2 X-Men in the movie, which is funny because when Deadpool goes to the school, Professor X's school, the X Mansion, he goes, "It's funny how for such a big school, I only see 2 of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford more X-Men or something," which is another one of those moments that breaks the fourth wall, and it's just one of those funny moments, and it's definitely true. This movie did not have the budget it should have. It deserved way more. Now on to the character that lots of people are mad didn't have an appearance, is Copycat. Deadpool's girlfriend's name was Vanessa in this movie, and Vanessa apparently in the comics was a superhero called Copycat, who was a mutant who could, what I've heard, shapeshift and had all these abilities, but she did not make an appearance in the movie, and I didn't take the time to look her up, so until Deadpool 2, there's no Copycat in this universe. Now on to Weasel, played by literally any other time I could say his name. Now I can't think of it. I'll think of it. He's a comedian. Alright, well, anyways, Weasel, the character who's the bartender in this movie, he's very funny. He's there to basically he's also another one of those comic relief characters. Most of them are in this movie, but he's played by T.J. Miller, I think. Yeah, T.J. Miller. He's played by T.J. Miller's a funny guy. I've seen some of his stand-up, and he used to host Equals 3 a long time ago, and I saw him do that. That's how I knew of him in the first place. But seeing him in this movie, he did a great job. Really funny. Actually, he was my favorite character of the movie, but he didn't get too much screen time. And then on to Ajax, the villain of the movie, and his other name was Francis, which was an ongoing thing where Ajax kept telling Deadpool, "Say my name." And every single time he said that, I would already have forgotten what his name was, and I'd have to wait till Deadpool said it, and then I'd be like, that's what his name is. Even when doing this review, I had to look his name up beforehand just to find out what he was called, because I couldn't remember. He was a good villain. He was one of those characters who was set out to be unlikable and succeeded in being unlikable. So they did their job. And then the final villain of the movie was Angel Dust, who was this big brute girl who gave Colossus a run for his money. There was a great, I've heard it called a real world moment. I just consider it a funny moment where her and Colossus are in a fight and her top pops off. And you don't see anything. Colossus covers it up with his hand, but it's funny. He tells her to pull it back up, and she thanks him, and then just immediately socks him in the groin, which is funny. It kind of shows never go easy on them in a fight. Never go easy on your opponent. They'll just take advantage of you, and Colossus gets taken advantage of in a very comedic way. And actually, she seems to have almost won the battle had Negasonic Teenage Warhead not stepped in and saved Colossus, which is one of the only, I think, 3 times, like I said, that she uses her power. So she was definitely underutilized, which she should not have been. She could have been a very cool character. And this movie is very meta. The meta humor in this is great. Deadpool constantly talks to the camera. Almost reminds me of Malcolm in the Middle, where he's always turning and saying something to the camera, although in this, it's always comedical. Malcolm in the Middle, a lot of the time, he just says something very, I don't know. A lot of the time, that's comedical, too, but he can be mopey a lot in that show. In this, Deadpool is not mopey a lot. I think there's one moment when you actually see, like, some real emotion from him, and that's when he's being tortured and he's put in this low oxygen tank, and when he's let out, he's screaming at Ajax, and that's the only time I think that he actually showed like his real side. But anyway, back to the meta humor. It was great. I loved it. One of my favorite parts, like I said earlier, was when he mentions the 2 Charles Xaviers. He asks him, when Colossus handcuffs him, he asks him which one he's going to see, because this whole alternate universe thing confuses him, which it definitely confuses me too. So I'm right there with you, Deadpool. All right, now I'm going to be getting into spoilers. So if you haven't seen Deadpool, go see Deadpool as long as you meet the guides that I told you earlier. If you're over 13, you have a decent amount of exposure, and if you understand, if you're a fan of older movies, you can get a lot of these references. Also, if you're not squeamish, I guess, because there is a lot of violence in this movie, bloodshed. And you have to be warned, there is nudity in this movie. Quite a bit of it at one point. So, moving on, like I said, into spoilers. One of my favorite parts of the movie was the baby hand. And for those of you who've seen the movie, you know already right away what I'm talking about, the baby hand. Deadpool cuts his hand off, and I was talking to you earlier about when he was handcuffed. He cuts his hand off, and in order to get away from Colossus, and when it's regrowing, it starts out as this little baby hand that he caresses blind Al's. He like rubs up on her chin with. It's a very funny moment. I love that. And then the other part that's definitely spoiler heavy is at the very end of the movie. Deadpool gets Ajax down on the ground, and Ajax basically reveals that he can't cure Deadpool. He can't make him look normal again. Deadpool's stuck looking like very, very ugly, as they compared him to Freddy Krueger or an avocado having sex with an older avocado. So, yeah. So he's stuck looking like that, and Colossus comes over and he gives a speech. He's like, it only takes a few moments for a person to be a hero. All you have to do is... people think you wake up a hero, brush your teeth a hero, go to work a hero, come home a hero, but it only takes these few moments. And as he's giving the speech, in my head, I'm like, oh, Deadpool should just shoot him right now. And immediately he does. He just pops him in the head, and that was the end of Ajax. And it makes Colossus throw up, and that part is... That's one of my favorite parts of the movie. Okay, so now on to some more spoilery stuff. The after credits scene. The after credits scene starts out where you just see like Deadpool pop his head around this bathroom doorway, and he's looking at you through this hallway. And immediately I was like, this seems very familiar. And he walks up to the camera. He's like, what are you doing here? The movie's over. Go home. And right away I was like, this is Ferris Bueller, and everyone in the theater who was still there, because this scene does not come at usually the ending credits happen, and there's like the pre-credits in the ending credits, where is the action-y credits or whatever, and then it shows the cutscene, and then you get the boring, slow scroll. But this one, it just, at the end of the slow scroll is when you get the very first and only after credit scene, which is this, when Deadpool walks up, and it's spoofing Ferris Bueller. He's talking to the camera. He's like, go home. And then he says cable. He's like, yeah. Oh, and by the way, we couldn't afford a fancy special credits scene, but we are going to have Cable in the sequel. We haven't cast him yet. And then he lists off 3 actors, or 2 actors and 1 actress who could play Cable, which is a joke for the actress. But he lists them off. He says the only requirement is they need a flat top, and that's it. They need to be big and have a flat top. That's what he says. And so I don't know who Cable is, but I know lots of fans were very excited about this. Like in the theater, when he said that, people were cheering. So I'm assuming Cable's a very cool comic book character. If any of you know who that is and have stuck around this long, comment down below and tell me who that is. And thank you for watching, by the way. Okay, so now on to recommendations for this movie. So, like I said, I would definitely recommend this movie for people who are old enough and mature enough to handle it. It is a very funny movie, a very action-packed movie. If you're a casual Deadpool fan like me, you might want to see this movie. I wanted to, and I liked it. If you're a very hardcore Deadpool fan, go see this movie. If you haven't seen it yet, then are you really all that hardcore of a Deadpool fan? Ratings, I would give it overall 3.5 out of 5. Because, like I said, some of the humor doesn't land, and the way they tell the story, they tell it where it's like Batman Begins, where some of it is in the present, and then it cuts back to the past in order to reveal what happened in the past, and then it cuts to the present and past and present and past. And, you know, that's okay. We've seen it done before. We've seen it done better. This movie misses out on a couple key things that it should have showed, such as how Colossus and Deadpool knew each other, because Colossus clearly knows who Deadpool is, and they never go into that. And now I'm getting some on my phone, but forget that. Colossus clearly knows who Deadpool is by the time they meet, and it's just very, I guess, it's a plot hole that they don't show how. Deadpool says, you're all caught up now, but really, are we? Because we definitely don't know what's going on here. Earlier I said some of the humor is a bit crude. They didn't need to do all of it, but, you know, they did it, and can't complain. I thought it was funny. Even though some of it didn't land, the other people in the theater thought it was funny. So there's that. So like I said, 3 out of 5. That's my rating for the movie. Thank you for watching. If you've stayed around this long, that's like a sincere thank you. D-Man out.